Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the TopCyberPro podcast. We're season five. We're getting started with a lot of great guests, and this is a guest now. Now, a lot of you look at some of these videos and interviews, and they've been with like what I call level 99 experts in their field in the industry. Well, we have someone. I'm going to use the term mid-career, and I like to have an interview every now and then with someone that's either in the beginning of the journey or at the middle, what I would call their mid-career, where they already got like 10 plus years in but they still got miles and miles to go because this is going to be a portfolio on someone that started at the bottom. Now he's here mid-career, and I met this gentleman actually a few years ago. I went to a conference in Wiesbaden, Germany. It's by the USERA G6. They do a cyber summit, which is a wonderful conference. If anyone is ever in the Europe region and you have a .mil or a cat card, you can register or maybe attend virtually. They do have a website, g6cybersummit.com, which I will put the link down below. And you may be able to register if you have a cat card to see some of these events virtually. It's a wonderful event bringing people together to collaborate about cyber, talk cyber. But not this isn't a discussion about the cyber summit. This is a discussion about this brilliant young man that I've crossed paths with a few years ago. And I say young man because I'm nearly 50, so he's impressed upon me with his intelligence. He's sharp, and when you're in the presence of someone that's got it put together, is the word I'll use, and they got all this knowledge, and you could just already tell this guy is always one of the smartest person in every room he's in every meeting. And I know he's going to say he's going to be too humble, and that's another great thing about him. He's very humble about it, and he's not full of ego or pride, and he's super helpful. Like when people are having discussions or questions, he wants to offer information. He's got we'll mention talk about his blog and his website, and he'll give me all these links that we're going to talk about. So if you're listening and he mentions a link or website, don't panic. He's going to give me the links. They will be in the description below. So we're going to save you the Google searching or having to quickly write down URL. So don't worry. But without further ado, with all that being said, welcome to the podcast. It's Francell Flood.
Hello. Nice to virtually meet everybody. It is a privilege to be on the podcast. And it's also a privilege that you said I was smart because everybody's smarter than me. Like I always feel like I'm not the smartest and I have to keep proving it. But that's also imposter syndrome. And a lot of people have imposter syndrome. So that is something that I continually work towards. And I can always get smarter. There's always someone smarter. There's always a bigger fish. So I'm always
That's him
learning.
being very humble, but let me reframe when I say he's super intelligent, smart. There's book smart, there's like what they call common sense smart, street smarts, and then there's a level of awareness and intellect to know that you know where your limits are, you know where you want to grow your knowledge base and grow your skill set. This gentleman is a perpetual student, much like myself, where he's always studying, he's always growing his knowledge base. That's what makes him smart and intelligent because he's always in the pursuit of more knowledge. And that's what every cyber professional should live up to is that standard. And I recognized this 2 years ago when I first met this gentleman. And I was like, okay, we need to stay in touch. And so we just had this event this summer of 2025. So I said, hey, I got to have you on the podcast. So we got to just talk about your career, how you got to where you are, which we're about to get to, and then what's in the future for you the next 5 plus years. Because this is what I feel. A lot of folks that might watch this, if they're watching like a level 99, like a double masters, like Win Masters from MITRE, she's level 99, right? She's like the vice president of MITRE, double masters in mathematics, a phenomenal brain. But then the people are like, I'll never be a double. I won't even get 1 degree in math. And I get it. It could be intimidating. But see, this is someone that just a few years ago was probably just like anybody else in college trying to figure out life, what path they were going to go to. So with that being said, and by the way, he's got his last name is Flood, which is a great name for marketing. I can't wait to see what he brands in the future and starts setting up sub platforms and education stuff. Again, that's later in this discussion. But without further ado, can you take us through what your day one was? What was the day one when you said, hey, I think I want to do this computer tech, cyber IT, whatever it was at the time? What's that story for your day one?
So I agree, knowledge is power. And I love that. I mean, knowledge, no one can ever take it away from you. Even if you're somewhere, knowledge, they can't take it away. And they're going to need it. So when they need it, you have it. But day one, so I'm going to try to condense all this.
Okay.
But it goes way back. I'm in my mid 30s now. And I was probably about 14. And I got in trouble at home. My dad took away everything. He said, all you get is this, I think it was ASP book, Net ASP or something like that.
Yep.
He said, you get this book And I said, you know what? I'm gonna read this book because I'm mad. So I read the book and I keep reading. And then I'm like, oh, this is all right, not bad. Then I turned 17 and my mom's like, go to Cisco, go to this class. It's a Cisco class, it's computer stuff. And I'm like, I don't wanna go. She's like, you get out of school, take the bus to the class, learn this thing, get a good grade. I'm out of school. Sure, I'll get on the bus. I go take Cisco routing and switching. It's kind of interesting. I'm like, this is kind of cool. So then I'm going through that class. Then I'm thinking about it and I talk to people. That's what I do, a social nerd, like you said, very that awareness of people. So I'm always talking to somebody because I can always learn from everyone. And someone said, well, why don't you just do this and then turn it into like breaking into stuff? And I'm like, you can't do that. And they said, yeah, you can break into things and get paid for it. And I said, no, I can't. I'm 17 years old. And then they show me, yes, there's jobs, there's careers. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. So networking was my main. I started with Cisco routing. Actually, I don't really tell a lot of people this, but I'll tell you right now and tell the viewers right now. I failed my CCNA when I was 17.
Hey, you're
And I
17.
said, that's trash. But I didn't stop. I just failed the test. Whatever. I'm 17. So I keep going. Then I go to college, Bowie State, shout out. And I go to Bowie and they have a degree in network security. I'm like, this sounds perfect. So I start going there and then I keep getting smarter, learning from people, the other kids in the class, they were all older. And then afterwards, I was like, I'm really learning stuff. So at that point in college, that's when I realized this is probably what I'm going to do because it's not too hard for me. However, I can keep learning stuff. And if I want it to be harder, then I can keep going and make it hard as I want. And my goal was $60 an hour because I said I wanted $1 a minute. And I looked up the careers when I was in college and I said, oh, they make $60 an hour. Okay. So I knew I was going to be good. And that's when I decided that's probably what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
So all it took was $1 a minute. That's the
Yeah,
minimum
that's it.
goal, and he worked to build up to there. When we talk about the progression of a career, right? When you first started, your first paying, whether it was hourly or salary, can you kind of talk about the transition that you worked this one job? A lot of folks they say, well, I don't want to be stuck. I want to be working at like a help desk
Mhm,
services level forever. But I usually tell
mhm.
people if you're good at what you do, people will recognize you and your efforts, and they'll say, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? And then you will progress. So could you maybe kind of quickly describe your progression and because I've looked at your LinkedIn profile. You have progressed super fast because obviously managers have recognized your talent, recognized your capacity for more, and they have given you more responsibility continuously through your career to this point. So could you maybe give us a synopsis of those transitions from one role to the next and the next?
So I started out help desk. I was, learning at home really when I was younger, 17, 18. I was practicing in my parents' house. They paid the electricity. Great. So I'm sitting there practicing all the time. I didn't really have a real job. I'm 18, about to graduate. So I'm practicing some Friday, Saturday nights. I didn't go out. I was home on the server downstairs, which was not a real server. It was a laptop that I made into a server, but that took practice. And then over time, I'm like, oh, I need a job. So I went, my first IT job I remember was Staples, Easy Tech. And I was 18, maybe 17. And it was with computers, but I was so young and I didn't have any certs. So I said, okay, I can do this. I have the experience. I had been practicing. So I did that. Then after I went to college, I said, well, I have real experience now in college. Like I took classes, I'm passing these with not A's. I'm not a straight A student by any means. So I'm passing these classes. Then I went for contracting. I said, you know what? Maybe I could be a contractor. And I just applied. And I got one that was salary. And I went to school. In the morning, I went to work from 8 o'clock until about 4. Then from 5 till 10, I went to school. So those were high level courses at the end of the day. So I kept doing that every day. It was a pattern from about 10 to 11 or 12 is when my time was. I can go out and have fun, but I had to be at work at 8. So it was work in the morning, school, a little bit of fun because you need a break, and then back to work. So I did that for about 2 years. And then I graduated college. And I said, well, I already have work experience. I'm not like the rest of the people who are graduating and have no experience. So I switched jobs and I went up by salary. I went up and then I didn't have school. So I just started practicing in my house. And then I moved out. So I practiced in my own apartment and I had work. And then after 4 years or maybe 3 years, I moved again because I just kept moving up because there's no reason for me to stay if I want to do something else or if I know I can do better, for lack of a better word. So I just kept going until I found something I really liked. And when I found something I really liked, I stayed until I ended up moving. And now I'm here, and I've been here for 5 years. So I'm staying here for multiple reasons, but we'll get into that later.
No worries.
But I really think moving helps. That comfortability is not, it's not healthy. It's good to stay where you're at, but if you want to progress, you have to progress. No one's going to come to you and say, hey, we have this job over here. You have to go out and be like, okay, where am I going? What am I looking for? And you can always apply. ABA, always be applying. So you can always apply, because ABBA is a whole band, but it's also a phrase. So always be applying, because the worst they can say is no. And then you're like, okay, cool. Moving on to the next one. There's a billion places you can go. It's just up to you what you want to do.
Yeah. I had a conversation recently with some colleagues just about that. And I said, you know what, a lot of cyber professionals, they reach a point of competency and then they get into the role because they earn the competency to be in the role. But what happens is they stop. They stop training, they stop studying, they stop acquiring certs or knowledge really, because you don't really have to have the certs if you're doing the training and the knowledge. But they get complacent and comfortable and complacent, and then they slowly rust. You know, you got to keep the brain and the knowledge base sharp. There's so much stuff with emerging tech and new technologies, or even just versions changing applications. You always have to be learning to keep the tool sharp. So with that being said, obviously along that synopsis of all these, you know, moving here, moving there, has there been people like, you know, whether they were managers, coworkers, colleagues, or people, or even just people that you didn't even know that you were following on the internet in an industry? I guess the goal of this question is to kind of pay homage to the people that had a positive impact on you, to keep you motivated, keep you inspired, or to share you things, show you the ropes, or whatever you want to classify it as along your career thus far.
Yes, there's always someone. So in high school, got the internship for the county government, and I was working help desk, and they said, "Oh, you know, you do all this stuff. Why don't you just make your own server?" I said, "What is that?" Now, like, I didn't know. And then when he told me that, Hyro, and I said, "Okay," I went home to my parents' house, and I started playing with stuff. And how do I do this? The internet's real. So that's how I started making my own server and practicing more at home. And then I was in college, had a professor who helped me a lot. He taught me a lot of things, not technical. He taught me work things. Like, just because your day ends at 5 doesn't mean it'll end at 5 every day. Like, you need to finish this job. And I say, but I'm off work. He said, no, your job is done when the work is done. And I never understood it until maybe 3 years later. I remembered it, and I actually just called him 3 days ago, and he's still around, still teaching. But I remember him, and then in every job I've been to, even right before I came here, I never knew I could move to Germany. I never knew this, but I was talking to coworkers, and they said, "You know, you can go overseas." I said, "No, I can't." They said, "Why not? Here, let me help you." I said, "Oh." So I ended up applying, and after you apply to a couple, someone's going to say yes. I always say this. I always say somebody's going to talk to me. I don't know who, but someone's going to talk to me. So I ended up over here, and thank you to her. I just called her literally an hour ago because I had to ask a question. So everybody's helped me in their own way, and it pushes me a little bit farther to where either I want to be, or even I didn't even know I was going to be here. I never knew I'd be overseas, and now I love it. And it's a blessing, but also it took effort. It's not just you just end up here. You have to have some type of skill set to bring some type of value add, as they would say in the professional world, to bring to the table. And that's what I've gained over the years.
So let's talk about what your current role is a little bit and to kind of flesh that out for some folks. You are a security control assessor. Is that the proper term? And
Yes.
or like a network systems auditor would be another related lateral term to that. So could you maybe explain a little bit about what the role is, why is it important, and why and what are you know what the why it's important, where people can start to get their knowledge and training going towards that role. Might have froze there. So let's start with the first part of the question. Let's talk about what is a security control assessor. Let's start there.
So security control assessor, you're looking at, this is how I explain it to people. You're looking at a room. That room, how can I break into that room? That's the physical way that you can think about it. But if you want to go take it to the network side or the computer side, you're looking at a network. How can I break into that network? Or you're looking at a device. How can I break into that device? Now switch it and say, how can I stop someone from breaking into the room, the network, the device? That's why back in the day when they said you can break into stuff, there's also the other side where you can stop people from breaking into things. But you have to think. You can't think like, oh, well, no one would do that. Yes, they would. So you have to think like that in order to stop that. And that's how a security control assessor thinks. They think in the mindset of, okay, what's open? Is a window open? Is a door open? Do I have locks on the door? Are there a camera looking at the door? What's going on? And that's how security mindset really is.
Mm-hmm. And so, what being a security control assessor, what would be avenues? Because we talk about there's a million plus ways to get into cyber because there's so many roles, so many opportunities. But particularly for a security control assessor, what would be the most ideal background? Because some people might say, oh, maybe having a systems admin background's best. Some will say a network admin. Someone will just say, hey, you just come right into it as long as you can read and comprehend. What is your perspective on what would be the best backgrounds to come into being a security control assessor?
So I'll speak on my own, I guess, experience. So I started with networking because I like theory. Like I always ask people, do you like technical or do you like theory? Technical is ones and zeros, exploits, the actual commands. Theory is how does it all fit together? I don't know how the ones and zeros work exactly. I can keep up. But if you ask me to write a SQL database select statement, I'm not doing that. But I know what an SQL database select statement is because it's theory of how it works. So I started with networking and then I moved on to sysadmin because I had to practice and I was practicing at my parents' house. So I was like, oh, I have all this stuff to practice with. I didn't have a whole bunch of money. So I'm like, I got one laptop and I got to figure it out. So I did that. So networking to sysadmin. And then afterwards, I went into security because with the security, you can see how the network and the systems admin come together and you can secure it all. So that's how I went from my career progression.
Mhm. And so right there, folks, I mean, whether you start systems networks and one to the other, or you just come right into it. I always tell people this statement when they said, can I do cyber? And I'll say, well, can you read and can you comprehend? And if you can read and comprehend, you can learn anything, you can do anything in cyber. So with that being said, if someone is saying, hey, I think I might want to be a security control assessor. It sounds pretty cool. You get to live in foreign places like Germany and Korea or wherever in the world. What would be step one? Like if someone was looking for that first 1 to 3 certs, let's say, let's frame it into 1, 2, and 3. What would you recommend? And I know there's a lot of certifications out there, folks, and this is just only our opinions. So, Francell, what would you say is like the first 3 certs people should be looking at?
So personally, I did Network Plus just because networking, and that was easier than CCNA, so I failed it. But Network Plus was my first one. And then after Network Plus, I did Security Plus because after a while, you start to think like a security person. You're like, wait a minute, I know how the network works, but security wise, I have to think like that. So I did that next. And then I took the CASP and I said, oh, the CASP, it's nice, but it's more technical. So I was like, I'm not really a technical guy. So I failed the CASP and I went back for the CYSA and I
Okay.
passed my CYSA. And all these tests are without any like training for me because I was practicing so much at home. I mean, every day for about 3 hours, I was on the server, I was practicing. So I didn't have the training and the training cost money for me. And I'm 19, 20. I'm trying to go out and have a good time. I didn't want to spend money on it. I was so young.
Trying to get a CASP at 19, 20 is
Yeah,
a challenge, right? But
it was
I will
hard.
say, now, at least for the past 3 years, the CASP and the CYSA are very closely aligned now. It's scary.
Mm,
So if you can, pass the one, you can pretty much will pass the other. They're very similar. But yeah, continue. So you
yeah.
mentioned the
So,
CYSA, you mentioned CASP, you
mhm.
mentioned Sec Plus, you mentioned Net Plus. All
Yep.
great certs, what I consider good entry level certs to not just get into the field and get some foundational knowledge, but actually to get a job. These are some of the top
CYSA,
certs you
yeah,
need to get started, especially
you can
Sec
get that.
Plus. If you're going to work in the DoD,
Sec Plus, 100%. 100%.
100%. That's a
Sec
good one.
Plus is like the baseline. Like you need a Sec Plus. It's not like a maybe. No, Sec Plus 100%. And then you're figuring out which way you want to go because you can always go technical, you can always go theory, you can always go super hard and go with CISSP. You can
Mhm.
always do whatever you want to
Or
do, but it's up to you. What do you like? Because whatever you like is what you'll be good at.
yeah.
So I like theory, CYSA. Then I just got my CCSP 2 days ago. So I just got that for cloud because again, I got bored. So I said, let me just study this on my own. So I studied. I have a VMware ESXi server here, have a Proxmox here. So I'm practicing on the cloud because technically that's cloud. I use cloud software as a service. I use Google and Microsoft and all that. So I'm like, I use it. So I practiced it, took the test 2 days ago, passed that. So that's what I mean, and the SISM. I have the SISM as well because it's manager type thing. Yep. So if you want to not be technical and think like a manager, you have to get a management cert. So I have the degree and I have my SISM. So that's management level. And that's where I want to go eventually when I get older.
Well, you just brought us to our next question. What is your next 5+ years look like? What are some certs in that pathway? What are some bodies of knowledge that you want to acquire? Because not everything's about a certification. You know, you reach a point where you can still study about something and gain knowledge in an area. So, what are those areas of knowledge that you want to take yourself to the next level in the next 5 years? And are they certs? Or are they courses or programs you're eyeballing?
So this is crazy because I don't think a lot of people, I mean, maybe they do think like this. I think like this now because I've learned from people at work. I always learn from everybody. I'm done with the technical certs. I've got my CCSP. I've got my SISM. I got my degree. I got everything. Now it's people. People I'm naturally, I don't want to say good at, but I have affinity towards conversation, towards the human aspect of life. However, people can be difficult, but knowing how to read people will help dealing with like work, outside of work. So now I have to learn more because I know enough, but to become a manager of not just 4 people, but 40 people, 400 people, you have to be able to read not only your direct subordinate, but their subordinates. You have to be able to talk to everyone and get on their level. If they're here, technically, you have to be here. If they're here, technically, then you have to be here, but don't make them feel bad. You have to be understanding. So that is my next goal really is to move from the technical side more into management, more into conversation, because if you can break down complex topics for a person who's not in computers at all and they deal with finance, then you've gained an ally, you've gained a client, you've gained a friend maybe. I mean, you've gained a lot of things, but it takes effort in order to break down IP schema to a person who works on cars. Not saying they don't know their stuff because they might change oil and change the carburetor real good, but that's not their forte. Like IP schema isn't their forte, just like tire rotation is not my forte. So you have to be able to explain it simply. As Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't really know it.
Like that a lot. So when the when we're talking about things like when you study, let's give some golden nuggets because you just said you just passed the CCSP, and that is no simple layup of feet of a cert. It is a higher level intermediate cert, and it does take a lot of study. It does take a little bit of you got to put some effort behind it to acquire that certification. So with that being said, can you maybe step us through some of your study habits that you use so that other people that are studying for whatever certs they're studying is like, hey, I didn't think of that one. So what are some study habits that you incorporate?
Okay, so my first study habit, just because I know what type of person I am, I know I have to do it. I have to practice. So I need to be in the house. It's Friday night right now, about 6:30, and I'm not outside yet. I will be later, but again, that little time for fun. But right now, I have to work on stuff. So when I practice, I'm practicing in the house at least per week, 6, 7 hours minimum. That's if I have a really busy week, 7 hours minimum, normal, more like 15. And when I say practice, CCSP is cloud-based. So I have the ESXi server. I already reinstalled it a couple times. I'm already working on how does this work? What can I see in there? I can't see the temperature. I know because my server runs hot because it's not really on a real server. It's on a NUC. So I'm like, cloud layer 1 hypervisors, you can't see the temperature. That's a thing that you need to know for the test. So I'm like, oh, I know this because I've already had that problem. Another thing that I practice with is I have my own little network here, which everybody, if you have internet, you have a network. You have a corporate network that's small. That's all it is. So when I'm in the house doing scans on the network, I'm using Nmap. That's a great tool. So I'm using Nmap on my network. And I'm like, I see this IP scheme. What if I subnet? Oh, okay, I can't do that. Oh, what if I do this? So it's continual trial and error for me. Then I also use YouTube videos sometimes because sometimes I have issues with stuff I don't use. For example, regulations and laws. In my house, I will never have to deal with GBLA. I will never have to deal with ISO 27001. I won't. but I need to know it. So now I'm listening to YouTube videos and I'm like, how can I remember this? So I'm thinking, okay, privacy, 18. I know when I'm 18, my information is now public. I'm an adult. So that's privacy. Oh, ISO 27018 is privacy 18. I'm thinking about stuff like that. Oh, 2750, 27, yeah, 0050, something to do with cops because 50 is cops. So e-discovery, oh, e-discovery, that's 50. So I have to think about like, how can I remember these regulations that I will never use in my personal life? How can I remember these? Because I have to if I ever go to a position where I need to know these or even just to pass a test. So everybody learns in different ways. Reading, some people learn through books. I can't. I just zone out. That's part of my ADHD. So I just zone out. So I'm like, okay, but I know what works and know yourself because no one's going to know you better than yourself.
It's funny you mentioned this. Know thyself, from Shakespeare. The
Mhm.
One of my ebooks on Amazon is called Active Learning, and in Active Learning, I talk about you really got to self-assess yourself of what types of learning and type of learner you are, and the types of learning that's more conducive for you to
Mhm.
retain the information. And a
I
lot of folks
just
are visual.
I just remember one thing.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
One last thing that really helps a lot. The explanation, explaining things to people helps.
Yes.
Because if I'm explaining it to my wife and I'm like, she doesn't know, she's not a computer person, she's good with kids. But if I explain to her how this network works, I remember more.
Yeah.
So that is also another thing. Sorry, I had to say that to
Oh yeah,
explain it
but
to
it brings you
people.
back to what you said earlier about if you can't explain it simply, then you
Mm-hmm.
don't know it enough, and so you just
Mm-hmm.
personified that, that you
Yeah.
were able to explain it simply. But yeah, back to the active learning, folks. I'll put the link for that ebook. It just kind of restructures your perspective on learning so that you can learn and retain information for longer. And there are other techniques that are even more advanced than my active learning. Obviously, the creme de la creme is like the mind palace or memory palace technique, mind castle, whatever label you want to get, palace, castle, fortress, etc. But it is a technique where you can visually in your head, associate information with like a room, and there's several approaches to it. I'll also include a TED Talk video about the mind palace technique also down below. It's a phenomenal video. Uh, I know we could keep talking a lot about this, but I want to kind of get to a point to where we talked about what you want to go to management, right? And so a lot of folks, I tell people CISP and PMP is the best one-two punch for most management to director level positions. But there's other types of trainings and knowledge to get there. There's a lot of free training regarding like Six Sigma training. There's Lean Six. There's a Scrum. So there's a lot of different methodologies and training that you can do for free. And I always advocate people always do all of the free training you can find first before you start spending your hard-earned money. But back to the fundamental, and I want to mention this in particular because there'll be a link I include below. If you're starting out and you're working on your Security Plus, one of the best YouTube channels out there, and again, TopCyberPro can get you ready for Sec Plus all the way to SSP, but I'm going to mention this gentleman because he's been doing it for a long time, and I love it when people are doing good in this world. It's Professor Messer. This gentleman has
Yes.
put out his
Yes.
YouTube channel with everything about Sec Plus, all the videos. He explains it super simply and super well. And so
Yes.
many people have gotten their Sec Plus because of this man. He is doing great work in the world and for industry. So Professor Messer is a plug for him. His link will be down below. So if you're
Mhm.
wanting to start your cybersecurity journey and you want to go after that fundamental first cert of Sec Plus, Professor Messer is one of the best in the business. And guess what? His YouTube channel is free. Just subscribe, like his videos, help him out. But the link will be below. And again, I'm advocating him even before you come to Top Cyber Pro. But when you're done with your Sec Plus and you want to go for your CISP, then come see me. So anyhow, moving along. So I know you got such a bright future, and folks, I might not have said this term earlier, but I look at Francell here as he's a rising rock star because more people are going to find out about this guy as he starts to develop more content because he hasn't even begun working on that aspect of the public side of his career because he's been so in the weeds working the technical side doing assessments doing great things for the DoD and Department of Army for years now, and so he hasn't really thought about the rest of the commercial world and businesses in the world. But you know what, he has got the mindset for it. He's got business plans for this, so we're going to be seeing more of this guy in the future in one form or the other. And when you see this great potential in someone, you already can see 20 moves ahead on the chessboard. This guy's going to be everywhere because one, he's so well spoken. I mean, you've heard him speak just so eloquently. he doesn't have a lot of ahs and ums like some people do. And I know I still go on them sometimes because I'm a guilty of. But that's just a mark of how he has a very like a good consistent pace of thinking, and that's what it comes down to. Because sometimes some of us we think too fast, and then we got to
Mhm.
stumble and roll it back, so we kind of pause too much,
Oh,
or
I
we're
have that
thinking.
issue. I have it. I just have to make sure that when I explain to people, not everybody thinks like I think. So I have to think about how do they think? How can I get what I want to say across to them? And then take personal knowledge of them. Because just because they think this way doesn't mean the next person thinks the same way. So over time, I've learned that being another country, different languages, having to talk to different people from different backgrounds. And I really think it's a good thing. My mom was also an English teacher, so that helped a lot.
There it is.
But again, you can learn something from everyone. Doesn't matter
Everybody, I like
if
that.
they're outside, inside, they're taking out the trash. You can learn something from everybody because everyone has a skill set that you don't have, but you can gain
And
it.
that's why this is going to be a phenomenal leader in cybersecurity because he already knows he can learn from everybody. You get a lot of people that get the blinders on, it's their way or the highway, but this man is a
Mhm.
perpetual student. And when you see something like that in someone, you're like, I got to have you on the podcast because I think you're going to be inspirational. A lot of folks watching this. So I want to talk a little bit about a couple books I want to recommend, just not just for you, but for anyone else that's considering transitioning from technical into management. One of the first
Mhm.
ones is Chris Voss has a book called Never Split the Difference. Highly recommend it because it's very critical for negotiating and getting the things you want in a way that everybody feels like they won. And so
Mhm.
he's got a couple little short clips on the internet, but the book is phenomenal. And then pretty much anything by Simon Sinek is gold. It's absolute gold when it comes to leadership, being a leader, affecting change and positive change. He's one of the best in the business. So I highly recommend those two, Chris Voss and Simon Sinek, and that would be probably tremendous in your helping you gain that insight in your journey.
I
Um,
do have a book now. One book I will. This is the only book that I can plug, but it helped. I think it helped. I was younger. I was probably 17, and it's How to Win Friends or Make Friends and Influence People.
for those people, yeah.
I read that and I was working while I was reading it, and I said, "This is nice." And I remember reading it, and it helps with the communication skills, with being able to read and the situation, read the room, even if it's not legible.
Yes.
That's what you have to do. You have to be able to read the room, and it's not legible. And I mean, that book helped. So that's, I guess, my book plug is that book.
Good recommendation. So please give me the link to that from Amazon. And folks, all these links we're talking about will be in the description below. We're going to save you that Google search. All right. So this is the moment of the podcast where all my guests is, I call it my moment of levity. And it's just for pure fun because we've been talking, career, cert, education, bodies of knowledge. We've been talking all that stuff. And then, it gets dry after a while. So this is what I call my moment of levity. I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. There's no right or wrong answer. Just the first answer pops in your head.
Okay.
All right. First one out the gate. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yes.
It's a sandwich. Okay. What do you put on your hot dog?
Ketchup, relish, mustard, maybe onions because I'm in Germany.
Pretty much everything, right? All right.
Yeah.
Here's the one that splits the room. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Which edition of the Star Wars? Is it the old trilogy, original trilogy, the new trilogy, or the new trilogy?
New trilogy, not new new.
So the Phantom Menace, Jar Jar Binks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Who's your favorite Star Wars character? With that being said, don't say Jar Jar Binks.
That's not the first thing that came to my head. It would have to be Mace Windu or Yoda, but Yoda's very like top level. So
He's
Mace
top level,
Windu,
right? Yeah, but
yeah,
Mace was
Mace
pretty
Windu is
bad.
probably one
Was
of my
pretty
favorites.
bad. Oh goodness, my brain just drew a blank. Cake or pie?
Cake,
Cake? What kind of cake?
lemon with vanilla frosting,
Hot or cold? Lemon cake with vanilla frosting.
hot.
Hot cake. All right. What has been your most favorite book of all time that you've read? And what was the
Mm.
last book you've read?
My favorite book of all time was Malcolm Gladwell, The Tipping Point. The
Oh,
Tipping Point is my favorite book. I like a lot of non-technical books about
no,
emotions and
that's
like
fine.
minds. So that's my favorite. My most recent book, it's actually two. I'm in the middle of two right now. One is Letters from My Father, and the other one is what's the other one? It's about escaping North Korean prison, and it's the number 13 is in the
Yeah.
book.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about escaping a North Korean prison, and he escaped. And that's what I'm reading right now, along with Letters from My Father.
Wow. How do you, again, I'm not a big reader, so I'll admit that. One of my weaknesses is I'm not a big reader, right? But when you're reading two books, because I know people that read two plus or more books, How do you keep the stories and narratives separate in your brain? I mean, I know it requires some compartmentalization. That's the easy thing to say. But really, do you read them in the same day, or is there like certain days you feel like reading this one, certain days you feel like reading that? Okay.
Yeah. So if depending on how the day goes, because now I'm recently married,
Mhm.
days can go
Congratulations.
different. Days can go different. So if I need
If you
to
feel like a North
learn,
Korean prisoner.
then I'm reading this book. I'm reading this book. If we're having some challenges that we have to work through or we need to communicate more, I'm reading this book. But if I know she's having a bad day and I need to be there for her, I'm reading Letters from My Father, because that
Okay.
way I know how to react to different
And
personalities.
then other
Because
days you're reading Tipping Point.
some days when I'm bored, which is a lot, then I'm like, okay, I'll read a book I've already read. Then I'll read How to Win Friends and Influence People, just to reinforce, because it takes 7 times to remember something. So I'm reading stuff that I've already read. So this is how I decide what I'm going to read. And if I don't want to read it all, then I will just throw on a podcast or something, because then I'm like, okay, my eyes hurt. I wear glasses, my eyes hurt. So I'm just going to listen to something. But very rarely am I like not learning. Either I'm listening to a book, I'm reading a book, and if I had that little bit of time in the day, listening to music, because you always have to have a balance to where you're jamming out or you're learning. But that
Mhm.
balance is important.
Good, well spoken. Um, let's talk about now back to the career. Getting back to the serious stuff again. What has been a challenge along your career, whether a project, dealing with a difficult person, coworker, boss, manager, or what has been a challenge? And can you that you can share with us? Because everybody's going to go through challenges in their career along their way. What has been one of the big challenges that you've had to work with, and how did you either adapt, overcome, work around it? How did you deal with that challenge?
I think there's three main ones. I'll start with the least serious: people. And when I say people, coworkers. Sometimes your coworkers or your teammates don't do what they're supposed to do. That's normal. So my workaround is always, like I said before, someone's going to talk to me eventually. So if they can't do it, that's okay. Someone else can. So you just work around that to get the job done, because it's not about that person. It's about the mission. It's about the job. It's about the end game. So the end game, you can always work around. As Microsoft says, there's 3 ways to do everything. So you can find a way around it. That's the least hard thing I have to deal with, least challenging thing. Second would be my age. My age is hard, because when you're 29 and you're 30 years old and you're coming in a room and you know the answer and you know how to handle this, and older people are 50 saying, oh, no, 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 we've always done it like this. Well, we also don't use COBOL anymore. So, I mean, are we trying to go Fortran or not? So I have to, but I can't say that. I have to be I have
Tactful.
to phrase it the right way. I can't say we don't do like in the 1960s anymore. I can't say that. So I have to like just, oh, can you teach me that? Oh, it's interesting. And then how you phrase it based upon my age, because people are like, you're only 29. How do you know? Now, even being in my mid 30s, people are like, how do you know? You haven't been doing this long. And I'm like, but I do know geolocation on Snapchat because you don't use it. But I use Snapchat because that's my generation's thing. So using what I have to further my goals and the goals of the project is something that takes eloquence, and you cannot come in like a raging bull with a hammer. You have to come in soft, smooth, a little bit of tact, emotional intelligence, and that way you get the job done. And people will say, oh, I've never thought about that. Now you've made a friend. You've made a friend who can help you in your next step.
Mhm.
Number one, this is the hardest one.
Okay.
Number one, that's why I got serious. Number one, there's never enough time in a day. There's never enough time in a day. You can literally say, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, but you only have time for two thises,
Yeah.
not everything.
Maybe
So
three if you're lucky.
yeah, you have to do something. So spreading yourself too thin and not having enough time for not just technical stuff, but even outside of work. You go to work all day and then you come home and then you want to practice on the server, but you have a kid over here or a wife over here and you don't spend quality time. She goes to bed at a certain time, you're up half the night, and now at work you're doing great, but at home you're failing. So that's the hardest thing, finding time to balance both my personal life, my family life, because that's different, and my work life. I mean, there's so much to do, but there's only 24 hours in a day, and 8 of them we sleep. So 16 hours to do everything we want to do, we got to find a balance. And that's the hardest part for me. The hardest facet of my life is finding a balance of coming home, playing games for an hour, studying for an hour, or practicing on my server for an hour, and then spending time with her. Because I can't just be on this all day. I can't just game all day. So you have to find that balance. That's the hardest thing, time management.
Time management. And not to plug myself again, but I do have a book called Time for Time Management. But actually, the new
Right.
version is called Boosh, and it's basically how to be super productive and maximize your capacity. And for like 4 or 5 years in a row, I've always just keep outdoing myself from the previous year because I maximize every minute of my day.
Mhm.
And if folks want to check that out, it's in the description below. But Francell, we could talk forever and ever, and I want to respect your time. And it's a Friday evening that we're doing this recording right now. But a lot of us professionals, no matter how demanding our day jobs are, and even when we leave work, if we have like another business, whether we're doing consulting services or other work, that's non-technical, or just taking care of life, mowing the grass, going out with family and kids, etc. We have busy lives, but we often find times, and a lot of the professionals I talk to make time for what I call volunteer work, charity work, nonprofit causes that are near and dear to their heart. So the question really is, are there any nonprofit volunteer charities, organizations that are doing good in the world? And whether you give of your time, energy, or monetarily, is there something you want to shine a light on? So what this question is really for is there a cause that's near and dear to your heart that you want to share with us to say, hey, this organization is trying to fix this problem in the world. I believe they're great. And if you could donate of your time, energy, or money to them, or just follow their socials, because that's what I'll have you do is send me the socials and links for this organization. But this is a moment to shine a light on a business organization that's trying to do some good in the world.
That's a good question, and I have a two-part answer.
I
That's
love it.
actually I have an answer, but I also have a question in addition to the answer.
Okay.
So I think I don't know when I got this. Maybe I got it from my parents, my mom and dad. I don't know, but I don't have a specific charity that or a specific thing that I want that I have, not I want, because I would like to give my time, but I have not because I that's the first part because I haven't found one. And I would like to give my time, but I don't think I found one. And that's the question. If there is one, I'd be more than happy to figure out how to make that work. That's the first part of the answer.
Okay.
Second part is now I will say how I give back. I will say this. Mentoring is one of the biggest things for me. Even when I'm at work, even when I'm not at work, I have a whole folder on my cloud storage for if people need stuff, and it happens all the time. All the time when I'm out, whether it be outside. I actually just helped a college friend. She's starting her own company, and she needed software as a service. So I'm just always telling people basically what we're talking about right now: how to start. What do you need for this? Do you need that? So I think each one teach one is my main thing. Each one teach one because I teach this guy just like someone taught me. And then that guy teaches this girl teaches this kid. And now there's a kid that's 17 years old in his parents' house right now working on an old Dell Optiplex. And one day he's going to be here or in another country, but he started on that Optiplex. And it's because someone helped him. So that's what I always do. I always try to help people I see outside get to where they want to get.
Mhm. So I love that. I love your question. So I'm gonna give you an answer. You already mentioned you got CompTIA USA. You mentioned you have your SISM. So let's start with ISACA. ISACA has lots of volunteer opportunities that you can find when you log into your profile dashboard, and you just got to
Mm-hmm.
check it out. They might not maybe be something in your immediate area, but it might be
Uh-huh.
something that, if you're back in an area that has something or that you could sign up for and plan for, maybe do a little bit of coordination. So I would say check with your
Okay.
organization that you are credentialed in, that you're a member of first, because that way you're giving back to the profession and you're earning CPEs and continuing education credits anyway. So it's a win-win. You get the
Smart.
benefit of helping people, helping a nonprofit, help others. And then for those watching and saying, I'm going to give you a bunch of links in the description below for education, scholarship opportunities, as well as free training programs to get you started. There's going to be a blog called Free Training Education and Apply for Scholarships. So in the description below, there's going to be a plethora of links. There's a lot of organizations that are nonprofit, that have funding to help people that need that funding and they just need to match, get the funding so they can get the education, they can benefit society. And so these are great organizations. I'm gonna list in the description below. So thank you, Francell, for giving me that question back because a lot of folks want to know, well, I would give back. Where do I start? And hey,
Mhm.
start with ISACA, start with CompTIA, start with ISC Square. These nonprofit certification authorities do a lot of programs to help people. And just to plug one more program, before you get your Sec Plus, I'm going to give someone something. I know I mentioned Professor Messer. He's fantastic. But ISC Square has the Certified in Cybersecurity Pledge and Program. It
I heard
is
about
a million vouchers they're going to give out. And last I heard, they were like barely at 600,000. That means there's 400,000 vouchers they're willing to give out to anyone that you just got an email address. You register real quick with your name and email, and they will send you a voucher code to go take this exam. So already you're getting a free exam. Plus, when they give you this voucher, you create an account with ISC Square to do their free training for that exam. Now, certified in cybersecurity, I'll be brutally honest, will not get you a job as of today. It is an entry level certification. But guess what? It is your first step to kind of gauging yourself, taking that early level training that's all free. And you get this credential from a very well recognized organization, ISC Square, that you can list on your resume. And that can be your first step before you go do Professor Messer and all the studies to get your Sec Plus. So think of this as that first foundation that you're going to lay down of the house you're going to build of your career.
it.
You get that certified cybersecurity because what? It's free, free cert, free exam code, free training. Why, how can you argue with free? It just takes you and your time. And as I said, if you could read and comprehend, you could get that cert. And then once you get that cert, you might be another 10 to 20 hours of focused training and study from getting your Sec Plus. Imagine that. You take this free training, knock it out, let's say 1, 2 weeks. Now you're another 20 hours or less of focused training for getting that Sec Plus and having a good shot at getting your first entry level
Entry.
job.
Yeah.
So again, I don't care if you're a recent college dropout or you graduated, you don't like where your career is going, you want to do something else. You could be already 10 plus years in a career. You could be in your 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and you want to transit. Hey, we need everybody in cyber. We don't care how old you are, male or female, what background you have. We need all your knowledges and experiences from whatever industry or job you're coming from because it all is useful in cyber.
So I do have a friend to plug that. A true story, if you will. He was in construction, and we grew up together. And he's 34, and we grew up together. And about when he was 26, he said, "I don't want to do construction anymore. It's too hard on my body." And I
Yeah.
said, "Okay, what you need? I got you." And I sent him all my stuff. I trained him, helped him learn about networks because that's my forte. And then went into security. Now he works for Microsoft, working remotely, lives in Mexico, and he's a Microsoft engineer doing something with like software. And he didn't have any cyber training, no computer training. He was literally in construction. And he was 26. And then he started practicing. He moved to Mexico maybe 2 years ago. So he moved when he was 34 or 32. So it took him, what, 6 years maybe? But he got it. And now he's making good money, working
Good
remotely.
money, living a good
Yeah.
life.
And he
And,
lives
and
in
like I said,
Mexico.
folks, everybody wants to
Real.
say what they want about the job market and how many opens they are. Is the bottom line is there are opportunities. There's always
Mhm.
opportunities, and
Always.
so it just takes a lot of consistency, dedication, and the word I like to use is you got to go all in. You just can't tiptoe the water. You have to just jump in and go all in and really want. And as in anything in life, you want anything in life, you dedicate your mind and time to it. You can accomplish anything. So.
True.
Francel, with all of my guests, I like to give them the final word and let them have the last few minutes to say whatever statement you want. It could be just complete gibberish. It could be your critique of a movie of the Marvel Universe. It could be about cyber. It could be about education. Whatever you want it to be, the floor is yours.
Well, first, shout out to my wife. Got to do that because that's important. I think that's important. Number two, I really appreciate being on the show. And I really appreciate not just this, but also the knowledge that you have, because definitely there's a lot of knowledge up there. There's a lot of knowledge up there. And I'm definitely going to keep learning over time, as I always do. Um, I really am excited to see where not just cyber is, but where it's going to be at with AI. That's interesting for me, just because I'm starting to use that in my own life now a lot. Again, practicing at home. So I'm practicing at home with my preferred AI. Everybody has their favorite Copilot or Claude or ChatGPT. Everybody has a favorite. So I have my favorite too. I won't say which one it is,
It's
but
not Gronk.
It's not. It's not. It's not.
Gronk. I'm sorry, Gronk.
It's not. So, I mean, I'm really interested to see where that's going to go with cyber and how that'll intersect. I also know personally I will use it at home, but I'm going to move more into the social dynamics of work just because finding a social nerd is very hard. And that's where I'm like, boom, about to shine. So that's where I think I'm going to go. And we'll see in the next, I don't know, 5 years. We'll see what happens. You know, I might have a kid by then. So we'll see where I'm at.
So let me make this promise to you. If I'm still kicking and alive in 5 years and I'm still doing like season probably 13 or 15 of the Top Cyber Pro podcast, in 5 years from today, let's mark our calendars. And if I'm
Okay.
still doing this podcast, let's have you back in 5 years and see, since this one, where have you
Okay.
come? So
That's
that'll
going to
keep
be
you
interesting.
accountable.
Okay.
Keep you
I'm,
accountable.
I'm, I'm going to put it in my calendar right after this because the
Well,
cloud.
folks, this consider this video almost like a time capsule because this gentleman right now has got miles to go in his career, and I believe, and I'm a betting man, and I'm going to bet that I'll go all in to say this right now. In 5 years, this man is going to be a top leader in our industry, high profile. A lot of people will be learning and benefiting from him, getting into cyber because of him, being inspired by him, and he's just going to make a huge splash and wave because he's got everything there, all the potential capacity there. And the fact that he's a perpetual student and never stops learning, he will not be beaten because he will always be learning and always be growing. And that is what makes a level 99 cybersecurity professional. And this guy is just only a few years from being level 99. So in 5 years, when he's back, I expect to be having a different conversation with a level 99 top cyber pro expert. So Francell,
In
it's been
five
a
years,
pleasure.
I'll be bald. I'll be bald probably in 5 years. So I'll look a
Let's
little
see if the
older,
hair
but
holds out for 5 years, folks. Anyway, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your story. And folks, please check out all the links below. We're going to have a lot of links from this episode, so check them all out. And again, 5 years, follow back up because if we're both kicking and I got this podcast going, we're going to see this gentleman do great things. So thank you so much for
thank
being
you.
on Top Cyber Pro podcast.
I appreciate it.